Welcome, detectives, to another episode of Solve the Crime. Tonight you face a chilling mystery cloaked in isolation and storm. A lone lighthouse keeper has met his demise, and suspicion falls upon three intriguing characters who each had their own reasons to want him dead. Can you piece together the clues and determine who among them is the cunning killer? The rules are simple. Examine the evidence, question the suspects, then decide who killed the lighthouse keeper. Leave your theory in the comments. The answer will be revealed in the next episode. But beware, detectives, for this case is as treacherous as the waves crashing against the shore. Every clue is a life raft, every suspect a potential lifeline to the truth. Who will you trust? Are you ready? Then let's begin. Part 1, the case file. The desolate coastline was their only witness as heavy rain lashed against the towering cliffs. A violent storm had been raging for days, isolating the small community of Oak Haven from the rest of the world. The wind screamed like a banshee, mimicking the agony of those fighting to stay afloat in the churning seas below. Waves crashed and receded, rhythmically crashing against the shore. Inside the lighthouse, a scene of chaos awaited the arrival of the first responders. Thomas Blackwood, the 58-year-old lighthouse keeper, was found slumped over his desk, a single gunshot wound marring the left side of his head. His weathered face, usually creased with a warm smile, was now frozen in a silent scream. The gun lay on the floor nearby, a 22 caliber pistol, the same one he kept beside him for protection against the occasional robber or desperate fisherman seeking shelter during a storm. There were no signs of forced entry, and nothing appeared to be missing. It was as if Mr. Blackwood had welcomed his assailant in, Sheriff Davis thought grimly, stroking his salt and pepper mustache. But why? And what had caused this normally placid man to meet such a violent end? The sheriff turned his gaze to the three individuals who stood huddled together on the cliff edge, their faces pale and drawn in the flickering light of the emergency lamp. Nora Granger, the lighthouse keeper's wife, her eyes red-rimmed and filled with unshed tears. Eli Walsh, a taciturn fisherman who had known Mr. Blackwood for many years, his face creased with worry. And lastly, Rachel Moore, a young journalist from the city whose curiosity about the isolated community had brought her to Oak Haven. Each of them had their own secrets, their own reasons to want the lighthouse keeper dead. But who among them was the killer? Part 2, the suspects. As the relentless rain continued to pour, casting an eerie glow over the crime scene, the sheriff began his investigation, starting with the obvious. First, there was Nora Granger, the lighthouse keeper's wife. She had been married to Mr. Blackwood for 20 years, a seemingly happy union that had produced 2 grown children. Yet rumors of domestic discord had reached the sheriff's ears. Some spoke of heated arguments echoing from the lighthouse on stormy nights, while others mentioned seeing the distraught woman on long walks along the shore, as if in search of solace from the tempest both within and without their home. Could it be that the keeper's wife, driven by years of discontent or perhaps something more sinister, had finally snapped, ending her husband's life in a fit of rage? The sheriff considered this, but Nora's behavior since the discovery of her husband's body suggested an innocence so profound that it was almost painful to watch. Her hands trembled as she spoke, her voice catching in her throat as she denied any knowledge of the murder weapon. She hadn't heard a gunshot, she insisted, her eyes wide with anguish. If she had, she would have called the police immediately. Then there was Eli Walsh, the fisherman. He had known the lighthouse keeper for many years, and their relationship seemed to have been a close one. They had often been seen fishing together in the treacherous waters off the Oak Haven coast, sharing stories and secrets over the gentle rocking of their small boat. Yet beneath the surface of their camaraderie, there had been a growing rift. Mr. Blackwood had recently accused Walsh of poaching in the restricted waters near the lighthouse, a charge the fisherman vehemently denied. In fact, he claimed he'd been at sea when the lighthouse keeper was killed, caught in the same storm that had raged through the night. The sheriff knew that many fishermen were known to bend the truth when it suited them, but Walsh's alibi, though circumstantial, did hold water. Still, something about the man's demeanor felt off. His eyes darting nervously around the room, his hands clenched into tight fists. Could the gruff fisherman have harbored resentment over his accusation? leading him to lash out in a moment of blind fury? Finally, there was Rachel Moore, the journalist. She had come to Oak Haven seeking a story, not knowing that she would soon be part of one. No one was sure exactly what had brought her to the isolated community, but some whispered that she had a knack for finding trouble wherever she went. Indeed, the young woman's reputation preceded her. A series of articles she had written about corrupt officials and shady businessmen had made her both famous and infamous in equal measure. But what could she possibly have in common with the unassuming lighthouse keeper? And why would anyone want to harm him? Yet as the sheriff looked into her eyes, he saw a glint of steel, a determination that hinted at a darkness that lay just beneath the surface. Could this seemingly harmless reporter have had a more sinister motive for coming to Oak Haven? Was she involved in something much bigger than all of them realized? Part 3, the clues. With the suspects identified, the sheriff turned his attention to the clues. First, there was the gun. The 22 caliber pistol was registered to Mr. Blackwood, but ballistics tests would later reveal that it wasn't the murder weapon. Confusingly, a fingerprint analysis found no usable prints on the gun or in the immediate vicinity of the crime scene, leaving the question of who had fired it unanswered. Next, the sheriff examined the body. Dr. Emily Carter, the county's medical examiner, had arrived earlier that morning. Her preliminary report indicated that Mr. Blackwood had been shot at close range from behind, the bullet entering just below his left ear. The time of death, she estimated, was between 3 and 4 a.m., which ruled out Nora Granger as an accomplice. She had been fast asleep in the lighthouse keeper's quarters, her breathing soft and even when the fatal shot was fired. But what about the others? Could Eli Walsh or Rachel Moore have slipped into the lighthouse unnoticed during the storm and carried out the murder before escaping? The sheriff thought it possible, but unlikely. The lighthouse was a sturdy structure, its windows thick and heavy, and it would have taken considerable force to break them. However, the sheriff's gaze lingered on a small, almost invisible crack on the window pane beside the desk where Mr. Blackwood had been found. It was barely noticeable, but to the trained eye of a seasoned detective, it was a significant clue. Someone had been peering through that window, the sheriff realized, watching Mr. Blackwood as he worked. But why? As the investigation continued, the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. The storm had cut Oak Haven off from the outside world, turning the quaint coastal community into a prison of sorts. No one had entered or left during the crucial hours surrounding the murder, and the lighthouse keeper had been alone except for his killer. But who was that person, and what had their motive been? As the sheriff delved deeper into the lives of the three suspects, he uncovered a web of deceit, betrayal, and long-held grudges. Long-held. Nora Granger, the grieving widow, had been having an affair with Eli Walsh, a fact that had been hidden from everyone, including herself, until the moment she stepped forward to identify her husband's body. Eli Walsh, the stoic fisherman, was in debt up to his weathered neck, his livelihood at risk due to changes in the fishing regulations that had been pushed through by none other than Mayor Blackwood. And Rachel Moore, the intrepid journalist, had stumbled upon a story far bigger than she had anticipated. One that threatened to expose a dark secret that had been buried in Oak Haven for years. Part 4. Time to decide. Now that you've examined all the evidence, it's time to decide. Who killed the lighthouse keeper? Was it Nora Granger, the grieving widow with a secret of her own? Eli Walsh, the troubled fisherman with a score to settle? Or Rachel Moore, the ambitious journalist with a nose for trouble? Who among them had the motive, the means, and the opportunity to commit the crime? What clues did you find most compelling, and how did they point you towards your chosen suspect? Let us know in the comment section below. Share your reasoning, your deductions, and your theories. For it is in the convergence of evidence and intuition that the truth is often found. But be careful, detectives, because in this game of cat and mouse, time is ticking. Until then, trust no one. And remember, the sea keeps its secrets